either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Ooh, 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 ah, ooh, ooh, ooh. Squeak.
Welcome to The Good, the Bad, and the Weird. I'm Chris.
That was Gorillin with a little bit of squirrel speak.
Uh-huh.
For Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. The chest pounding was just to assert the dominance over the cats.
I see. Well, if you guys couldn't tell, this week we went and saw the new Dr. Dolittle in theaters.
Yes. We didn't really plan on any Oscars or awards show movies, so we just kind of went with whatever sounded somewhat interesting.
Yep. Despite what my mother, I think, has always kind of hoped, I've never really cared for the award shows. She clears out our house, and, like, my brother and dad are forced to leave the basement. She makes herself popcorn and a drink every year and watches, I think, mostly the Golden Globes, but, like, any that she can get her hands on.
Yeah.
And then every year she's like, did you see the movie for this and this? And I was like, nope, sure didn't.
This year is honestly the first year I can ever remember being interested in the awards, just because I'd seen most of the movies, and I only needed to see, like, 2 for, like, Best Pictures at the Oscars.
Gotcha.
And so...
Yeah, somehow all of the ones that go up for nomination are ones that I have no interest in, which honestly doesn't surprise me, since my taste in movies is bad movies. I like those. So, you know, that makes sense.
You would like Parasite, though.
Yeah, I'm sure I would. I also just, I don't know, not a movie theater goer, so it takes me a while to get to these usually.
Yeah, so, but anywho.
But this year, we had to go see Dolittle because I love Dr. Dolittle.
And
specifically the 1967 Dr. Dolittle. Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittle is dead to me. I hate them all. They're a useless waste of space.
Yeah, and see, I only know, I think, maybe the first and second Eddie Murphy one. I think that's all he did, and then there's a spin-off with his daughter.
I was gonna say, I didn't ever see the third one. I wasn't even aware there was a third one until very recently.
Yeah.
Like,
and
they're funny, but boy, the original one is... It's old school children's quality content. It's in the same vein as Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, the old one. So, like, there's a lot of, instead of an adult telling a story to a child, it's children writing the story sort of concept. So it's a lot of giant pink snail and moth that flies in between the moon and the sun.
Is that how the book feels? Because that's what Erica mentioned, is that the movie was very close to, or closer to the original book.
Yeah. So Dr. Dolittle, the book, is more like, from what I remember, there's like one big book, and then I think there might be some series on top of it. Kind of like how Willy Wonka, there's like the one big book, and then there's a couple of little ones on the side.
I did not know that.
There is. They're not bad. They're not great, but they're not bad.
Okay.
And so the original movie and the books are very high fantasy. They're very children-oriented fantasy. So a lot of, like, very out there claims, you know, moon's made of cheese level of stuff.
Okay.
But it's all in good fun and kind of, you know, more of just plain entertainment. I will say that the 1967 movie is very heavy-handed on animal activism, kind of the same way Ferngully is very, you know, forest activism. Very much same level of, like, bam, you should be ready for this. But at the same time, like, it's a kid's movie full of song and dance, it's a musical, so, like, meh.
Okay.
So, the new movie, definitely closer to the 1967 version than Eddie Murphy's version, but not really.
Okay.
Similar, but different.
See, I have no reference point, so honestly, I haven't seen Eddie Murphy's Dr. Dolittle in probably well over a decade.
That's okay.
And so I really went into this movie pretty much blind.
Sure. This movie is more of the opposite of how the original was written. This is adults writing for kids.
Okay.
In the new one, which is why I think the jokes were kind of all over the place in this movie.
Yeah.
There was there was a humor style for everyone, but it was not a consistent humor style.
And,
so,
you know, that's fine in a movie, like, because everyone has different senses of humor,
sure.
but you have to display it in a specific way. Like, I don't know. For me, I did not find much comedy in this movie.
I don't know. I heard you giggling when he threw the parrot like a football.
Yes. I mean, that's... And your husband commented that of all... Up until that point in the movie, that was the only time I laughed.
Yes.
And I think probably one of the very few times I actually laughed at this movie. Like...
Whereas I found most of the comedy pretty good for me. But again, like, I'm not a high comedy person.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, though, that I did think that the reason there was such a breadth of comedy is this really isn't just like a you sit down at home and watch it movie. This is really more of a family movie.
Yeah.
So, you know, we have our weird poop jokes for the kids. We have our a little bit more highbrow jokes for a couple of adults. We've got some slapstick humor. We've got...
Mainly the squirrel.
Yeah, there's a little bit of everything. There's a couple of British humor moments in there.
Yeah.
So there's a comedy range, I think, that's meant to hit everyone from grandparents down to little kids. And while that's hard to do, I do think that, you know, in the text of a kid's movie, this was fairly balanced in trying to hit everyone.
Yeah, and just looking quickly at the IMDb page, there were 4 screenplay writers.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that might be part of the reason why some of it falls flat and doesn't really meet its mark.
Yeah. But I think that's okay, because while this movie is a comedy, I don't think it's meant to be a comedy. Does that make sense? It's a comedy by trait, but not by what it wants to be. It's
kind of like Evil Dead, where it was supposed to be a horror film, but ended up becoming so bad it was a comedy.
Yeah. And I think a lot of children's movies suffer from this, where it's really hard to write a high-adventure movie for kids, especially since this movie is targeted to much younger kids.
Yeah.
We're well past the below 10 age range here. Mm-hmm. But because it's got live actors and stuff in it, it's, I think, a little bit more palatable to the adults.
Yeah, I'm not gonna, it's not gonna really spoil anything.
No.
The beginning.
Yes.
So the movie starts off telling the backstory of Dolittle in, honestly...
really beautifully.
Yeah, a beautiful 3D shaded animation style.
It was really cute. I liked it.
I kind of wish that was the movie now. Like, that was how they did the entire thing, just because I was talking with one of our coworkers today, and I mentioned that opening scene, and he's like, well, isn't most of the movie CGI anyways? And I'm like, yeah, that's true. I mean, they could have just stuck with that one style. And it reminded me of something that one of my parents said that stuck with me. And I know they said it a long time ago, but like most movies that start off with like a cartoon sequence tend to be kind of bad, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. I do think there were parts of this movie that I'm not saying you should have, because I think it was good that you went in completely blind, but there were definitely a lot of homage to the 1967 movie in there. Mm-hmm. And I think maybe part of that was the animation opening. The original one, as in most movies of the time, opens with the credits as opposed to making you watch the whole movie and then the credits. Because if you're going to watch the movie, you have to sit through them, was the mindset.
Oh, yeah.
And
I started watching a Silent Ozu film last night, and that's how they all are, and then it just ends with the end.
Yes. And so the 1967 one starts off with a very cutesy, almost kid book style. Mm-hmm. It is animated. They open their mouths, tails move and stuff like that. Animals blink, but nothing too extreme. It's very similar to kind of Hungry Caterpillar in styles, but not quite as detailed. And so when that started on the big screen for the new one, I kind of got that flashback homage of it. Same thing with some of the animals, like the parrot. While in the new one, they keep calling her Polly. The old version, the parrot, same type of parrot, was named Polynesia.
Okay.
And her extensive vocabulary, her way of speaking was very similar to the old one. You know, she had a British accent. She was by far the best speaking parrot of all the land.
Yeah.
There's kind of some hints that maybe she's the one who teaches Dr. Dolittle how to speak animal.
Well,
all that sort of thing is very similar. Chi-Chi the gorilla is Chi-Chi the chimpanzee in the original one.
okay.
Chi-Chi does nothing in the original other than be adorable, but like also the original one was almost no fake animals. There's a couple of like actually fake animals that are fake in the old one, but everything else was live animals and they are crammed in there.
Okay.
So expecting Chi-Chi the chimpanzee to do anything, I think would have been pushing the limit.
Okay, cool. Because I was curious about some of the names, like the duck's name of Dab Dab. Are those original names, or like the polar bear being named Yoshi?
So I don't remember the book as well as I remember the movie, mostly because my husband hadn't seen the original movie, so I made him watch it right before we went. So I don't remember the book names super well. So I don't know if some of the other animals were named off the book. The only 3 animals that I think are truly given names in the old movie are the chimpanzee Chi-Chi, who's now a gorilla.
Okay.
Polynesia, who I would argue you could say her name's short for Polly.
Yeah.
Polly's short for. And then there's a very brief song about being a vegetarian and about Gub Gub the pig. And how it upsets Gub Gub that he might eat meat.
Gub Gub?
Gub Gub. I believe its name is Gub Gub. I don't hear so good, and there's no subtitles on this old one.
Yeah.
So I think its name is Gub Gub, but I might be wrong.
Okay. I was just curious about that just because, like, I'm sitting there and I'm like...
Yeah.
Because it sounds like it's more update modern. I thought maybe...
Yes.
There's a Dragon Ball Z fan in there for Chi-Chi.
No, Chi-Chi was originally a chimpanzee.
Okay.
And I think a lot of the animals were named from original sources, but I do think that they upped the ante now that everything's CG. So instead of Chi-Chi the chimpanzee, which for a 1960s movie would have been much more exotic.
Yeah.
Well, chimpanzee's not a showstopper anymore. I still think they're really cool, but a gorilla is a little bit more, especially size-wise.
Yeah, I mean, I watched videos of chimpanzees attacking and eating other monkeys. So.
Yeah, like, I'm not saying that chimpanzees in real life aren't, like, a solid monkey choice or ape choice, but I can see why, especially since they were wanting to have this whole talk of fear for kids, which is an interesting concept for a kids movie. A gorilla does make more sense. He's bigger, he's struggling with being big and scary.
Yeah.
You know, that makes sense to me.
Or being big but being scared of things.
Yeah.
So,
I also think it's easier for a kid to, you know, there's certain animals that kids instantly connect with usually, and we saw most of those in this film. You know, we got the polar bear, the giraffe, the
parrot,
ostrich,
the squirrel.
Yeah. So
the dog with glasses.
Yeah, there's no like Tibetan Siberian fox, which has a very bad face.
Yeah.
Like they were all animals that kids would be attached to or would be easily interested in, which I think is a smart choice since our audience is, I would say maybe the 5-year-old range is kind of like that sweet spot up until 10, and then the parents are there.
Yeah, I mean...
It's not bad. It's not a bad thing. This is a movie for the family, and they meant the whole family.
Yeah, no, and I mean, we had families in the theater, which...
Oh, we did. One of the kids in front of us, I was dying. He came in fake crying because he wanted popcorn.
Yes.
Fakest cried heard all day.
Yeah.
It was glorious.
Well, and I mean, I don't want to talk too much about the plot. It's very...
It's... You haven't seen this plot before out of a Dolittle.
Okay.
Which is fine. I think that's kind of the running theme of Dolittles, is you get to kind of take the characters and run with it, which is fine. I will say that the plot is kind of a standard high adventure for a kids movie.
Refinding yourself kind of movie.
Definitely. There's definitely a lot of self-exploration through the different animals and Dolittle, which... I don't know, not a bad thing.
Yeah.
I feel like that's fine.
I feel on my side of things, being the cynical adult I am, that I don't feel that all that was really fleshed out too much. I felt it was a little bit too bare bones. Like it's enough for kids to get there, but like
it is bare bones, but I see why they chose to make it bare bones, and I'm not mad because of it. I think it would be fun if, you know, we set this up and then continue it on with another movie or a kid's variation on it later on, which might happen. We'll see. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll see how it ends up being. I don't think it'll do super well in the box office, especially coming out right at Oscar season.
It did.
All the theaters releasing all the Oscar nominated movies. So.
That's true. I would say though that there's not a lot of ones that kids can go to. In theaters right now, so like it does have the market there, but we'll see. I do know that some of the adults in our office were talking about they would be willing to go just because Robert Downey Jr.
Johnny Depp does have a little cameo.
He does have a cameo, but Robert Downey Jr., especially just coming off of his Iron Man streak, which a lot of people absolutely loved him with, and he does a good job in this movie. I'm not crazy about the Scottish accent on him. Irish accent. I don't know.
It was all over the place.
It was a little all over the place, but I'm not like he did a good job, I guess.
I kind of like it just because he almost doesn't know how to speak like a human anymore.
Yes. The opening couple of scenes where he is true wild man was by far my favorite part of the movie. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was really well done because one of my husband's complaint about the old one was that in the old one there's no point where the animals speak human except for Polynesia. Okay. So it's all squeaks, oinks, and grunts the entire movie, and there's no chest pounding. It's mostly a very British man standing around going coo coo squeaky squeaky squeaky, while a different person in the background stands around with his Scottish accent, or no, he's an Irishman. Sorry, very apologize. I should know that. He sings about it multiple times in the movie. Him and a random boy and then a very prompt and proper English woman in the original stand around and explain what is going on. But the doctor's the only one who can talk to the animals, and at no point does the audience understand the animals. Okay. Whereas the Eddie Murphy one is almost all in normal human speak. There's not a lot of back and forth.
So, odd question, kind of tying back to our previous discussion in our Anastasia episode. Yes. Would this movie have benefited from musical bits?
Because I have seen Robert Downey Jr. in musical bits, I would say no. No. While he's a great actor, I've never really seen him as a song and dance sort of guy. I also think that the goal of this movie was to be appealing enough to adults to take their children to go see this movie, as opposed to kids. Like, example being Frozen, kids wanted to see that movie and they were making their parents take them.
Which I learned you can go see it with a sing-along version in theaters.
Oh, don't you know it?
I did not know that.
Oh my goodness, yes. And don't worry, every little girl will be singing along. That's not the problem. But whereas this movie, I think, was more of a parent choosing to take their kid to see it. Yeah. Which isn't a bad mindset. And I think that a balance of those kind of movies is nice, especially if you're the adult in the situation, because there's only so many times I can listen to Let It Go. Yeah. Whereas a movie like this one would be a fun break to say, hey kids, we're going to watch this one, and then you can go back to your Frozen streak sort of mindset. It gives me a break, despite the fact it's not an adult movie. Yeah. So I think if it had music in it, I think it probably would have lost a lot more adults. Okay. Also, I should mention, I don't believe the Eddie Murphy one had any music.
No, it didn't.
In it. And I will say that while I love the music in the original Dr. Dolittle, it is bad music. Okay. Like, there's legitimately a song about being a vegetarian. It has no place in being in the movie. Like
that's all why I was curious, just because you mentioned that the old one had musical.
The other thing to note is, while the old one is definitely a kids movie, it's 2 hours long. It has a built-in intermission on the DVD that is not just like a quick like blurb on the screen and then you're supposed to pause it and go, no. This is a full intermission put on the DVD.
They just ripped it right to the DVD, didn't bother to do any editing.
No, that's exactly what happened, because we put in the DVD and pushed play, and granted, we managed to find a brand new copy. Never used, brand new. And so straight from the box, this DVD we thought was broken because it sits on a hippo scene and plays music at the very, very beginning of the DVD for like 2 minutes. It's long enough that I was like, it might be it might have been longer than 2 minutes. I think I had to fast forward through just
to get to the menu?
Just to get it to start playing the credits. They didn't cut the beginning part of the credits off.
Oh.
So instead of like cutting all of the extra film off the front of the movie, they just left it there.
Okay.
So like that added to some time to it. There's arguably too many songs in the original. It doesn't need the amount of songs it has. Most of the songs are forgettable. The few that aren't super forgettable, the few that I would say are more theme song-y, could have easily and might have been put as background music as a theme, more like how Harry Potter does, where you just hear the same theme over and over again. No, it didn't need to be a musical.
Okay, cool.
No, even Chitty Chitty Bang Bang music is better than the original Dr. Dolittle's movie.
I still have not seen Chitty Chitty Bang Bang.
Oh, don't worry. Erica found out. We're gonna watch it.
How did she not know?
I think she forgot that you hadn't seen it, and then she found out Crystal hasn't seen it, and that at this point, that just leaves, I think, 3 of us who have seen it, because I'm not even sure Phil truly remembers Chitty Chitty.
Yeah.
If he does, it's secondhand memory.
All right. Well, back to Dolittle.
To the original.
So, I think my other thing with the movie is that I didn't feel that any of the actors or the characters had any of those special moments. It almost fell into... I was listening to a review, and I can't remember who it was, about the Guy Ritchie Arthur movie.
Yeah, sure.
Where the comment was that there was too many characters.
There was a lot of characters. Arguably more characters than the original, which is saying something, because the original one's plot is freaking all over the place.
Yes.
Like, we're gonna do this to get to this, to get to that, to get to this, to get to that, to get to this. At one point, the doctor's in jail. British jail.
Yeah.
Then he's on an island. But to get to the island, we have to make money. Like, it was a hot mess. So the plot from this one, also a bit of a hot mess. Less of a hot mess, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty straightforward, but I don't know, it just felt like he goes on a grand adventure, and I didn't feel like there was anything super magical about. No,
if anything, I would argue that while I think Robert Downey Jr. did do a good job, and the human growth interest was supposed to be Scubbins, I would argue that Chi-Chi the gorilla was more of a character development that was fun to watch than either of them.
There's no growth, but honestly...
I mean, Chi-Chi has growth, but, like, Chi-Chi's supposed to be a side character.
Chi-Chi, and I'm okay with side characters having growth or having their own story arc. That's fine, and his was minor.
Yeah.
I feel Dobbins was the kid's name?
Scubbins.
Scubbins
needs a new name.
Scubbins and Dolittle should have had the biggest growth arcs.
And I think Scubbins' growth arc should have connected to kids more. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really have a growth arc other than just being accepted by the group, and that's less of him growing and more of just like the group developing, unlike other like acceptance journeys, like example The Hobbit, where Bilbo does have a growth arc that leads to him being accepted. Mm-hmm. Scubbins doesn't. He just learns the language, which was going to happen anyway.
Yeah, which, that's one thing I do appreciate, that it's a learned aspect. It's not just some super magical ability.
Yes, and the original one, it was very similar. Only the doctor spoke it, and he taught himself over... granted, it was a very short amount of time. It was over, I think, 1 year, maybe 2. But he was a actual doctor before he was a veterinarian.
All right.
So that made sense. It kept true. I liked that it was a learned aspect and the details they put into that. But Yeah, they're like there's a lot of side characters going on.
Yeah, and
I didn't really feel a connection to any of them except for the octopus.
Snitches get stitches.
He like but at the same time, by putting a ton of side characters in instead of trying to make one perfect super cute animal side character, I think we avoided the Olaf syndrome.
Yeah,
which I did appreciate.
Yeah, I did too.
I'm tired of the single cute sidekick, and because we had all of the sidekicks, we did avoid that pretty successfully.
Arguably, the squirrel's kind of cute, but
he's also a bastard.
Yeah.
So he avoids the cuteness range only because he's a dick.
Yeah, and he's hell-bent on revenge.
He is very self-absorbed.
He actually kind of has his own little arc too.
He does. Granted, all of the characters do have a little arc. And I could see how, especially an adult who's gone through a similar circumstance, would see Dolittle's arc as more weighted than we did, or even a kid did. But because everybody had an arc, it
made it less special.
With maybe the exception of Polynesia, I feel like she had her shit together.
Yeah, no, she was the same through and through.
Yeah.
She's really the guiding force in the movie.
Which I appreciated, because she's the same way in the original as much as she could be with that hot mess. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm not angry about all of the side characters, because I think I would have hated it more if it was just the squirrel, or just the gorilla, or just the polar bear, or heaven forbid, just the ostrich.
Yeah.
So, I'm okay with the fact that we had all of the side characters all the time. But I don't know, it feels like maybe we could have cut the amount of travel in half and gotten a similar end result with more depth.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too for me is that I'm and there's not a whole lot of them, but with Disney planning their live actions coming up,
yes,
I have a feeling it's gonna get kind of old, because Disney has so many animal-based movies.
Yes, they do.
That I just feel like, at least back in the day, they used real animals, like Eddie Murphy's.
Sure.
And they had bad CGI to edit the lips.
Oh, it was bad.
But now we're kind of at this weird point where I wasn't a fan of the graphics of the movie. Except for the dragon. I love the dragon.
The dragon's design was really well thought out. I will give them that. I will say that I think the CGI is probably going to age on this movie.
Oh, yeah.
However, the animals' designs reminded me heavily of things like Paddington Bear, Winnie the Pooh, which I get why. It's easier to market if a polar bear has a hat on. And I think kids will connect better if there's a humanization. So the ostrich wearing socks, the polar bear hat, the gorilla blanket. It makes sense. I do think that adults are going to probably not connect with it. This is going to be a nostalgia heavy movie, I think, in the future. Kids who grew up with it are going to remember that, be attached to it, think it's important, and those of us who didn't grow up with this movie are going to be like, nah, they were silly.
Yeah, and I don't know. I kind of question, I guess, about maybe its position in the future.
Sure.
Like, for if some miraculous reason this movie actually does well, is it a good setup movie, or is it just or is it better off as a one-off curiosity until someone decides to remake the franchise again?
Really? That's a good question, because Disney has a miraculous way of creating a sequel where none belonged. And sometimes that sequel is fantastic. Lion King 1.5 was pure gold. But sometimes their sequels are just garbage.
Yeah, and so, I mean, this not being a Disney movie, it's Universal distributed it.
Sure.
I don't know.
And Universal's better about their sequels, in my opinion. They're a little pickier on making their sequels. This didn't set itself up for one. I could see maybe a long distant, like way out there, give it 5-10 years, maybe a sequel. but it kind of hits the same notes as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where even Charlie, there is a sequel written for Charlie already. The book is already made.
Yeah.
There is no place for it in the movie business.
Okay.
Could it be made? Sure. Would it do okay? Probably. But why? And I think that's kind of everyone's point of view on Dolittle, which I'm okay with. I think that's part of the reason the Eddie Murphy franchise just didn't hit home, is the first one, if it had just stood by itself, probably would have been better received. It
would have been a nice nostalgic oddity, which...
Yeah.
I will say there was much more charm in this movie than there was for the Eddie Murphy one.
Thank God, I was so worried about that. Eddie Murphy's, for some reason, just completely lacked charm. It was almost clinical. It was a little bit too much modern doctor, and modern doctor, especially for kids, not really the best topic. Most kids don't like doctors. And, like, most kids' ideas of what a vet is not what Eddie Murphy's movie provided. They're not even... I think most kids don't even imagine real vets as what real vets do, which is probably for the best. Squeezing dog butts is not as glorified as it should be. But I think by putting it old-timey, giving us a fake Queen Elizabeth, it works. It's much more charming. It's much more cute. There's a couple of on the verge of being steampunky moments with some of the gadgets he makes, which brings a fun element to it. It gives it more of that, like, whimsical, out-of-the-world feel. I think the time works. I think the magic in it works.
Yeah, and I don't know, maybe if I had kids of my own or nephews and nieces that wanted to go see it, I might have had a different experience rather than going to it as an adult.
Yes. And
with a bunch of other adults.
Yes. I think so, and this one also did lend itself nicely to, while there were definitely parts of the movie that I would not be thrilled with my kids repeating nonstop, because that is how children work. I don't think there was any parts of this movie that were so horrendous that, like, if it was said in church, we'd have to find a new church immediately. It's
not like Detective Pikachu.
Yeah, there was a couple points in Detective Pikachu that, if that was said, you know, we would need to find a new social gathering place.
Yeah.
But this one, while there were some more leaning towards the adult stuff, there was none blatantly adults. Is there a random weird butt thing in the movie? Yes.
Yeah.
It's not so badly done that it's movie ruining. It's not great.
No.
But I babysat boys who would have thought that is the funniest piece of shit on this planet.
I was a boy.
Yes.
And me and my brothers and my dad's, one of our favorite joke is, what do you get when you cross an owl with a bungee cord?
Don't know what.
My ass. Good old Kung Pao.
Oh, Kung Pao. Yeah. Or like one of my husband's favorite kid movies was that astronaut film where he farts in his spacesuit and has to hold his breath to get back to the ship.
Galaxy Quest?
No,
that's not it.
I don't remember. My husband's gonna be so mad I forgot the name of this movie. It's the same one where he drops his commemorative coin in the space toilet and has to go fish it out, and he comes out covered in blue.
I vaguely know this one. I can't think of it off the top of my head either.
I can't remember what it's called. I have seen it, honey. I promise. I remember the movie very well. But it has that one scene has a very similar joke vibe, and so there are definitely kids who that was targeted to, and that is going to make the movie for them, and it's going to ruin it for other people. And unfortunately, that's just how kids' movies work.
Yeah, and I don't know. I guess I'm still on that quest to find...
the perfect one?
Not the perfect, but a compelling children's story.
Yes,
like, comparable to Hugo.
Yeah, yeah.
Arguably, that's a children's movie, but
it is.
I loved it.
You remind me to give you the book for that one. It's a book like none other.
Okay.
It's mostly charcoal drawings.
Ooh.
But is this a perfect kid movie? No.
No.
Is it a good kids movie? I would argue yes. Is it a good adult movie? No.
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 Would you recommend going to see this movie in theaters?
If you have kids, especially between the ages of 5 and 12, yes. Your kids will love it. It will be hilarious. It is palatable enough to an adult to sit through the whole movie. And there's enough humor for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
If you are like me and you love kids' movies, yes, go see it.
As for me, the cynical adult I am, I do not recommend this movie.
No.
I mean, it had its charm. You and the girls or the other women were laughing quite a lot at it. Whereas, again, we were almost 30 minutes into the movie and I got my first chuckle out of it.
Yeah.
And
it's not a serious movie watcher's
No.
movie. It's definitely not a adult movie by any stretch of the imagination. But if you're an adult who still really enjoys things like Swan Lake, the original animated version, or you really liked the movie Tintin, you will get an enjoyment out of this movie. I wouldn't say it's as good as Tintin. I thought Tintin's story was a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But this isn't a bad movie. I think it's definitely a Redbox level movie.
I think it's wait for Netflix streaming level, honestly.
Yeah. If you're a normal adult with normal movie tastes, you could skip this one.
Yeah.
If you're an adult who enjoys kids' movies and you got the time, it is a fun thing to watch in theaters, especially coming from someone who hates movie theaters. This one's not too loud. There's no jumpy, scary bits.
Yeah.
It's not unbearably bright, which is a weird complaint for a movie theater, but, like, I hate it when it's like, aha, look at the sun. Yes, I can see the sun. Turn it down.
Side little tangent. Someone did jump at the movie. Your husband jumped at the little marbles dropping before the movie even started.
Why do... Okay, granted, the surround sound system that our movie theater chooses to have, I'm convinced that whoever sits up there in the booth cranks the volume up right before that thing turns on, because it makes horrible bouncing noises and marble noises and swooshing noises, and then it whispers in your ear.
All around you.
I hate it. I absolutely hate that piece of equipment. I would much rather there just be like one person at the front telling me the lines. That would be much more enjoyable than that stupid thing. But the movie itself is not unbearably loud at any points if you're a sensitive moviegoer. It's not uncomfortable to watch. There's no headache-inducing moments. It's not terribly seasick-inducing. So if you like movies, this is a fun one to see if you're into kids' movies. Yeah. Otherwise, wait for it to be on DVD when one of your friends has it.
Exactly.
Will I be buying it? You betcha.
Nope.
I will own it, and we will watch it every year. It'll be a 4-hour-long little marathon.
I'll find a drinking game.
None of them will be the Eddie Murphy one. I'm sorry. I hate it. I hate it so much.
Anywho. Squeak, squeak. Squeaker, squeak 'em.
Wait a minute. Anyway, thanks for listening.
Peace. He's channeling my inner Kronk.
I could tell.